Okay, the technique that we're going to do for this class is where you're going to use thick paint and thin paint to create your surface. So, of course, you're going to begin with your gessoed surface to start with. Now, you can, while your gesso is wet, also create some marks and texture on your surface. So while your gesso's wet, you can just lightly draw in some lines, or you can scrape through. You know, basically what you're doing is you're just creating the first part of your surface, just to make your gesso a little more, your surface that you did with your gesso a little more interesting. Okay, and you can also, if you want to, start by gessoing it and planning something. So you can start by deciding that you want to actually write a letter, to yourself or to someone. So, dear Joy, you are a creative artist. And then you sign your name. Okay. So you can start with something like this, because you're not going to really see this, but it's a way that you can actually start your surface by writing in your surface. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do some stamping. And so you can take a stamp, and I just happen to have a stamp that has Joy on it. So you can take a stamp and you can just stamp into the gesso. You're not going to be doing this as a relief so much as the first part of your surface. Okay? So then you can take something else. You can actually take some other kind of texture and just do some other things over the first part that you did. Okay, so you dry this and then you begin your the second part of your surface. So, okay, so now that I've got the gesso's, a little bit of stain, I've got a little bit of stain on it. I'm going to come back and put another second layer on it. So what you're doing is you're just creating kind of a stained area, and instead of white, instead of your white background, you're going to have like a little bit of a stained area. And I like also to add black to my surface, because I don't know, just gives it kind of an aged look to it. At this point, I really don't know where it's going, and at this point, I really don't care. So I can also take and go through, where the gesso is wet, I can take and I can carve through that area and make some more interesting designs by marking through and, and just using an old pen, kind of like creating some more design on my surface. So now you can see that the background is the first thing that I did, and then this is the next layer. Okay, so you've got the stain over it, you've got now you've got the marks that are on top of that. Okay, so again, I'm going to come back and do some other things on it. So I'm going to turn. Okay, for the next technique, you can do one of two things to create a thick mixture. You can either use, when you do your acrylic paint, you can just use acrylic paint, but if you do, you probably could get like a thick, it's called a heavy body acrylics. And this is a paint that's already very, very thick, so you won't need to add any kind of medium to it to get it thicker. You can also just use your modeling paste, because your modeling paste, when you add it to the paint, will also make the paint thicker. So, but sometimes you can even get a craft paint that's thick, and like, you can take your craft paint and let it sit for a little bit until it's kind of gooey. That works, and I even used house paint at some point when I was just experimenting with house paint, and house paint works the same way. You just have to wait. You don't want to wait too long, though, because if you wait too long, of course, it will be impossible to use. But there is a way that you can use house paint and also craft paint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spread just a little bit of the molding paste on here, and then I actually have the acrylic paint on there as well. So let me show you how to do both. So you can actually take, when you did your molding paste technique last time, you actually used a stencil. So we can take a stencil and just take a stencil, and you can actually put your stencil on and then just go over the whole entire thing with the molding paste, and so that you have a relief, just a little bit of a relief. And do that, and then paint over it, or you can take and use your so you actually have a relief there, or you can take and mix a little bit of your paint with the molding paste and mix it up so it actually is so you actually have thicker paint. So what I'm doing now is actually I'm mixing up this molding paste with the acrylic paint. So then I'm actually going to use, I think I'm going to use another stencil. I'm not really, planning this as such. I'm just really just creating texture and pattern on my surface. So I'm not really worried about what kind of stencils I'm using, or I'm not really planning it. I'm just really creating a background. So you can just kind of intuitively just just play with the different tools that you're working with, and not really do it as a plan. Okay, so now what you've got again, put your stencil in the water so it doesn't dry up with the acrylic paint or the molding paste. Okay, so what you have now is you have one is done with the molding paste, just the molding paste, which we're going to paint over, and we're going to paint over the relief, and the other one is actually created with the molding paste and the paint. So you've actually got two different textures on your surface. Again, we're creating different surfaces, so you can even try taking a this is like something from it's just a plastic canvas that I use for texture. So what I can do is I can take and take a stiff brush and take some just regular paint and stipple it onto the surface. And so what you'll have is another type of surface, another type of texture. This won't have relief, but it'll make an interesting pattern. Okay, so here you got this as part of your surface as well. And you might think about putting it over here too. So you take and just stipple different areas. And again, you're just creating a background. So really, there's no rules. Okay. So you've got that. Maybe you just put a little bit over here too. And maybe change color. It looks like I'm going towards kind of an earthy color scheme, so I'm not worried about what it's going to look like right now. Okay, I might put a little bit of green in it too. Okay. I can also take my brush and just use my brush to do some background textures. And then if I want to use a rubbing plate, I can even put paint on the rubbing plate. Now these are just children's rubbing plates, and you can get these, you can actually pretty much get them anywhere. But they're just basically just little plastic rubbing plates. And I use these a great deal in my art as well. They're fun to use. And they're fun to actually use and create texture with. Okay, so now you've got this, which makes another interesting part of the background. Okay, all right, so now I'm thinking that we will do another stain surface. So I'm going to turn the camera off again, and now we're going to do another light stain over the whole entire surface. Okay, now what I'm doing is I'm taking the same stamp, and I'm going to bring some of the patterns I did in the first part of the background forward. So I'm just taking a stamp, and I'm going to stamp some paint into like just put some paint on the stamp and randomly stamp areas that I want to bring forward. Okay, so I've actually stamped in a next part of the surface. Okay, so I'm also going to I'm thinking about putting this stamp, using this stamp too. So I'm going to put some paint on that too and stamp. I just have some leftover paint here, so that's what I'm using. Okay, and so what I'm doing is I'm bringing the name Joy forward as well. And at this point I might think about where my focal point is, and I'm thinking my focal point is going to be in this area right here. So I can tell that this area here is probably going to be my focal point right in here. Okay, so we haven't talked about focal point, but later on we will talk about the importance of having some kind of focal point in your work for good composition, but right now we won't do that. So let's see. Okay, so now I've got, you know, a pretty interesting surface, a pretty interesting beginning of something. Okay, so what do I do next? Let's see. Maybe I'll put a little color on. Okay, so again, I'm going to turn the camera off, and I'm going to start putting in some color. There's a couple ways that you can add color to your surface. One way is to just use something called water-soluble pastel. It's like a crayon, but what's kind of cool about it is that it can be used as a crayon or as a pastel to add color, but you can also use it with water. So it's a fun way to just add some color to a surface. And what I do usually is I just use my finger. You can use a brush, but I kind of like using my finger to kind of blend the color. There's probably other brands that are similar to this, and they have a similar, they're basically a different kind of thing, but basically they do the same thing, and that's what they are, just water soluble. So you can also use like watercolor crayons in the same way. So it's just a way of staining or putting color on without using paint. You can also use this as an actual texture, because if you put it on thick enough, you can actually take, and again, taking a sharp instrument, a pen or something, and you can draw through it like scratch art. Okay, so I like to do that because again, that develops the a little bit more of the surface. Okay, so that's what we've done now, and we're going to come back again and add a little more color to it and bring it up, bring bring it forward, bring the surface forward. So I'm going to turn this off again. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use paint. But again, I'm not going to use a brush. I'm going to use my finger. And the reason why is because I just feel like your finger can do, like, I don't know, I just like using my finger. So you don't have to, it's not important that you do this, but I like the fact that you can actually you have more control when you use your finger. So you can decide where your paint is, where you want your paint to be. You do the same thing with a brush, but I just happen to like to use my finger. And again, I'm looking at doing more color around in the background. So I might even take some of this gold and use it to go over the main place of the main background. And because I've got this spiral, I'm going to use it to go around the spiral. And again, this is another part of the spiral over here, so I think I'll use this to bring out the spiral, and maybe just to put a little bit of color in it too. Okay, so now this area here that's brown, I want to actually go over that with the gold metallic paint too. Okay, so that's what I've got so far. And now you see that my background is much, much more interesting. And I'm actually creating a piece of artwork now. I'm actually working on bringing it so that it actually comes to a conclusion. So I might step back a little bit and decide, you know, what needs to be done next. Okay, so I'm thinking that I need a little bit of white here and there. So I'm going to take some thick paint, some thick white paint. And again, I'm going to use my stamp. And this time I'm going to use a brush to put the white paint on the stamp. So I have a little more control over my stamping. So again, I'm going to decide that I think this this stamp with the white paint needs to be a part of the focal point. And I didn't put the white paint on all the stamp, I just wanted it on a certain area. So this black here I think is a little bit too dark. I'm going to actually lighten it up a little bit. And I don't like this green here, so I'm going to use that to cover that green. Okay. And maybe like right on the edge here. Okay, so there. Okay, so now I've got, again, I've got the stamp that has the word joy on it. So I'm going to use that again. And this time I'm going to use a brush. And I am actually going to put this right on my focal point. So my focal point is right up here. And you can't really see that that's, you know, you can't really see that's joy, but you can see that it has an interesting design. Okay, so now I'm thinking that the white is too white, so I'm going to put some color over the white. But I'm not going to dry the, I'm really not going to dry the paint. I'm just going to put some color right over the, the wet white. I just want to put just a little bit of color on it. Sometimes white sticks out too much, and so it's, you know, it's important that there's color in the white, or it actually just takes over your whole entire painting. I mean, you can have a little bit of white here and there, but I think this was kind of overdone. So where it's the lightest is right here where the word joy is, so I'm going to leave that there. Okay. So now again, I step back and look at it and see if there's anything else I need to do. I think this area here is still a little bit dark, so I'm going to put a little more color on that. And I think maybe using another texture would work. So I've got this, which is just really a piece of fiber that'll make a neat texture. So I'm going to take and kind of, you know, tear the fiber a little bit before I actually use it as a texture. So I'm going to put it like right about here. So again, I'm going to take a stipple brush that's thick, you know, kind of stiff, and here's one right here. Okay, so the brush that's actually kind of a stiff brush, I'm going to put some paint on there too. So I'm going to stipple some color on there, and maybe even a little bit of lighter. Okay, let's see. Okay, and then I'm going to then again take the stencil and put the stencil here and bring out another part of the surface. So I'm going to stipple through the stencil. I think that needs a little bit, it needs to be a little bit lighter too. Okay. How about some green? Okay, I think that looks good. Now I think the green is a little too green, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put just a teeny bit of yellow on the green. But this time I think what I'll do is put just a tiny bit of yellow on the green, just to get it a little bit, just because it's a little too green. That's the thing, it's like really green. So I'm just going to put a little bit of yellow on the green. Now it has kind of a theme. I think the theme is growth. And because I started off with my own, like a letter to myself, it symbolizes creative growth. Okay. So now that is done. So now I'm going to put just a little bit of green over here. Just to balance it out a little bit. And over here. So, it's done, okay? And because I started off with a letter to myself, I think it symbolizes creative growth. And the word joy is my focal point, and so this area right in here is the focal point right here, okay? I like the spirals because, again, that symbolizes emerging from within and spiraling outward, again, growth. And I like the contrasting black and white that's there. And it's done, so I like it, okay? So I want to see what you do with your surface and using the different tools. We will be going through this a little bit more in depth when I do the class Joy of Creative Surfaces and Backgrounds in May, and you can find that on Etsy. And I hope to see you there in the class. And I will be going over some more techniques on creating surfaces. Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about this process that I went through. When I did this surface, I started with a black canvas, a canvas that I had actually put black on the surface to start with, and then I randomly colored kind of a grid. Not all the squares weren't completely, the same size, but it was kind of a grid formation where I covered the canvas with different colors of squares of color. After that, I dried it, and then after that, I started using a stencil. I put paint on the stencil and pulled it off, and it created some design on the surface. And I used some molding paste and paint together to create another surface. I took a pen, and while the paint was wet, I scratched through it. Also, while it was dry, I scratched through it, revealing the surface underneath. I also put black over the whole entire thing after I got done, and I covered the whole surface with black, and then I let that dry and then scratched through it again. I also took some stamps and stamped on the surface, and I also used various metallic paint. I covered the whole entire thing with gold metallic paint and over the relief, and then I put black over that to reveal the relief over the metallic paint. And then I used a method where you cover the surface again with various coloring, just kind of feathering in different colors. I kind of did several layers where I did color, then I did black over that, and then I did color over that, and I just kept layering, layering, layering. So this is a technique that I will be going through more of when I do my Joy of Creative Surfaces and Background. So I hope you join me on May 6th and register for my class. Thank you. Bye-bye.